Hello, welcome back. My name's Christine, and today we are getting a bonus edition of watercolor bouquets. So I've got my brushes today. This is going to be a collection from Artify Art Supplies. This is an 8 flat, a 6 dagger, and a round 1 brush. You can see they're all a little bit different in their style and size, but the plan for today is we're going to create this beautiful little set of flowers inside a Rainboot for Mother's Day. The paper I'm working with today is Potentate paper. It is postcard paper with little postcard lines on the back. Comes in this beautiful little tin, and you can see it's 100% cotton, and they're just the perfect size with the little rounded edges, which I love. All right, and then of course I have my water and I have my paints. The paints I'm using today are Masha's handmade watercolor paints, and we're gonna start off with the boot. Now, if you've been following me on Instagram and TikTok, you know that I am a fan of sketching with paint instead of pencil more often than not. I do love regular sketching as well, but I do find that sometimes it's way more convenient to sketch with paint than it is to sketch with a pencil. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go in with this watery gray color here. I'm going to show you here. Basically, it's just dirty pan paint that I'm adding water to. And I'm just going to create this boot shape. I'm going to keep it simple, very two-dimensional, kind of like that. And then we're going to give it this big body. And then we're just going to kind of pull out our little rain boot. And maybe it's got a bigger heel than I want to have, but I think generally speaking, that's going to be a really good shape to kind of work out of. And then I'm just going to kind of curl the boot up like this. And even potentially, I see rain boots that have that little kind of handle in here, right? So we'll also kind of create that handle for the rain boot as well. And then I'm going to create a little composition up here at the top. This is where I'm going to actually go in and really paint those flowers without sketching them out. I'm thinking daisies might be the best way to go, or maybe even trying to think of some spring flowers we could do. I've already done lavender and daisies. Maybe I should do something like daffodils. Let's do some daffodils in there, because those are still pretty actively blooming around here and they seem like a good option. So I'm going to start with the nose. And actually, it's probably a little big for the boot, but we're not working for perfection here. We're working for beautiful and inspired. So, not considering the fact that this boot is probably much bigger than a daffodil, we're gonna work inspired here with this impression of a rain boot. And then we'll do a couple of up here. Just that little nose with its little petals, kind of, actually petals on these are actually pretty big. Kind of see here and here. And just loosely going in and dropping them in on top. And then I'm gonna do one more right here in the center. A little wobbly. Kind of like where this would kind of curve in a little bit there, and then creating those big petals. There's usually 6 of them. And since I did paint over this light, this boot is pretty light, I can go over it with the paint. I'm gonna do 3 here, and then I'm gonna work around that here. And I'm using my dagger really to create these side shapes, right? So I start in the center and then I just kind of pull that dagger around the edge, pull it around the edge, and then use the tip to kind of tuck in some of those details, those shadowy areas, the darker areas where the center of the daffodil would be. And then again, I'm just kind of tucking this in here. It's a little darker because it's in between the 2 top or foreground petals, and then we'll work some detail on that as well. Okay, so I'm gonna add some greens. We're gonna just make some stocky leaves out of here and some stocky stems. Just pulling it in. This one might be tucking behind. You can make these as straight or as off as you'd like. You could even, this is probably coming through here, through that little Rainboot, and then that one here as well, with the implication of it going in the Rainboot behind. I'm gonna let that dry a little bit. I'm gonna go in and add some leaves. Daffodil leaves are those long and slender leaves. And I'm just pressing the base of my brush. Now that's pretty dry. If it's too dry, you can always go back in, or if you like the effect that it creates, you can just leave it the way it is. And of course, if you've been following me for a while, you know I do multiple layers here. So I can always go back afterwards and add more layers that I'm happier with anyway. Kind of like that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over these petals of the daffodil again in a warmer yellow on my palette. I'm never going to really go super deep into color with you on my tutorials, mostly because I go with what feels good rather than what, not a ton of color theory. I can give you a little bit, but it's not my background. So I generally am going to talk more in warm and cool tones. Or I'm going to refer to things as like a mustard yellow instead of maybe a gamboge. I know some of them, but I think sometimes when we buy paint, we're not always guaranteed to be buying the same color names, right? So it's really more about, in my mind, finding the colors that make your mind's eye the most happy. And I love a warm yellow. I don't know if it reminds me of sunshine or if it reminds me of just those warm spring flowers, but I do love them. I think I'm gonna lean into this boot maybe being black and white. I kind of like this vibe right now. I was initially thinking I was gonna go with blue, but I think I'm gonna go with black and white stripes or maybe polka dots. Let's give this heel a little something. I'm making the bottom of the boot a little bit more connected. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this, I'm gonna pull up some of that color that I made, that dirty paint on my palette that I mixed all together. And I'm just gonna fill this in. Now you choose any color you like, but I do like a nice gray and black. Notice I'm adding it to the bottom, but those colors are still pretty dark. I don't have a ton of water on that bottom layer, which is why it's not moving a ton. And if you don't happen to have black in your palette, my recommendation to you is mix up some purple and blue and yellow. And you'll start to find putting them together will create a cooler black tone. Honestly, you can pretty much combine any colors in your palette and it will eventually get you to a black or a brown color. Okay, I'm gonna add some darker pigments to the inside here of this center. I actually find that daffodils are the hardest to show off kind of from that front view. Add a little bit there, maybe a little bit in that shadowy spot. It's looking a little messy right now, but I'm okay with it because I know I'm gonna go in and move some of these pigments around a little bit. I'm just moving the pigment around so it doesn't necessarily look so messy. I'm also gonna add some of that black that I used on my boot in there as well, and then lift that out. Just want the impression that there's shadow in there. And admittedly, I can put it in a lot of different spots. Like that. All right, let me dry this because it's pretty soaked right now. Lots of puddles. And puddles are hard to work with. So I'm gonna dry this with my Chandler tool heat gun and I'll be right back. Okay, so you can see that the flowers got pretty messy pretty quickly. What I'm gonna do right now is I'm gonna go in with my one round and I'm gonna try and clean up some of these colors a little bit with a little bit more of a saturated paint. So saturated means less water. It doesn't mean no water, it just means less. So it's stronger going down. Like I really wanna bring attention to this petal. So I'm just going in and outlining it and then maybe creating some life underneath where you would see more shadows. This one's pretty good. I would say this one definitely needs a little bit more pigment, maybe some darker pigment in here because it is tucked behind. And then I would do the same thing. So I did it here. Could probably afford to use a little bit more back in here. And then when I feel like I'm losing control, maybe blend it out a little bit. And then I also wanted to definitely tuck, so I have this big one, this big one, this big one. Maybe a little bit more in here, kind of around that little nose. And adding more shadows to the inside part of that center. I'm gonna do the same thing over on this side as well with these guys. Just a little bit more control in the design. You love to use the side of my brush, not just the top. It can create some lovely brush strokes. I'm gonna go ahead, this is more of a shadowed area. So to give the effect of that shadow, I'm just dipping in a little bit of a darker yellow. And then around the edges, I'm gonna add that light roundness there. I'm gonna do it here too because it's gotten pretty light. There. And then if I look up here, it looks almost like this is flipped over a little bit, this petal. I'm gonna pull this in a little bit more and darken that up. And then of course up here, I like to do the tops and bottoms of petals and then try and leave the middles a little lighter. And the goal really is to build up some of that color and some of the intent for sun and shadow. I like that. Okay, I'm gonna zoom this in just a little bit, just so you can see a little bit more there. Okay, and then I think on this, I keep debating about what I'm gonna add, and I'm thinking I think I'm gonna darken this up. I'm gonna add some polka dots once it's dry. I'm leaning into white or maybe gray, but let's darken it up. So let me show you actually how I mix a black. So I'm gonna grab this brush instead, my dagger, just so that you can see it a little bit better. I'm gonna take some of this red and put it here in the middle. There's already a green underneath, so it's already darkening a little bit, right? I'm gonna add some blue to that. Very blue. Now you're like, oh, what have you done? No, it's totally fine. I'm gonna grab some more red. I'm gonna mix this in. Now, obviously this is making more of a purple color, right? The opposite of purple on the color wheel is yellow. So I'm gonna add some yellow to this, and now you can kind of see there is that black color. Really, it's when you put the opposites on a color wheel together, they either make black or they make brown, depending on the cool tones and the dark tones that you're working with. So I'm gonna go ahead and use this particular black to just bring some attention. Is this the brush I want? It is not. I wanna use this one. This is my flat edge brush. This will be great for the boot especially because it's got such a straight vibe. Now I'm looking, that sounded really weird, like a straight vibe. Oh well. I'm just gonna use it for this edge. It's just not as rounded, so I feel like I have a little bit more freedom in how I make that look. And I'm also gonna add just a little bit more shadow here. A little bit more shadow here. I'm just gonna drag it down a little bit. And then I'm also gonna add a little bit here to show there is going to be that extra indent or change in style there. I do want to add this, make this a little bit thicker. Like that. And then once again there. Just adding those shadows, and I do like the idea of having a strong looking line on the top. Okay. I'm just gonna blend that out a little bit more, soften up those sharp strokes. Okay, so it's looking a little bit more toned. I'm gonna go ahead and dry this one more time, and then we're gonna start doodling over the top. Okay, so this is pretty dry. I'm gonna use Bleed Proof White. This is a PH Martin watercolor. It's very opaque and it's gonna look like it's super dry when you open it up. You just need to add some water. I'm gonna use my round brush on this to make this a little bit more, some of my stuff out of the way here. So I'm just adding water. And then you've got this real nice opaque kind of paint on top. So I'm gonna go ahead and just make a little circle and shadow it in. And one down here. Not really shadow it in, paint it in, right? Over here. And over here. And you're gonna see the pigment's not gonna be as strong the more you paint with it, just because that pigment starts to be all used up. Right here. And then another one here. Here and here. And kind of like that. And we're just going to keep adding these in. Let me just down here for a little bit. They don't all have to be equal transparency, so that one's pretty light, but it doesn't really bother me. I think it actually is more interesting to look at when all the polka dots aren't exactly the same opacity. If you're wondering what all those clickety clacks are, it's my dogs walking around. And I like the tones in this. It gives like a classic, simple color vibe. Reminds me of like when you go to a baby shower or a bridal shower and they've got their colors and they got their centerpieces on the tables, whether it's black and gray or yellow and gray in this case, or purple and greens. Do you know what I mean? You know what I mean. Or if you don't, that's fine too. Okay, so I think the boot's adorable. I'm still gonna probably go in and darken up the layer on the bottom and the layer on the top a little bit. And then I'm gonna start doodling. What doodles do I use today? Let's see. I've got my Aquarel crayons. These are Caran d'Ache crayons. They are water soluble, which means that if I add water to them, they will move and travel all over the page. I also have Stabilo pencils, which are sharper and thinner, and I use them far more often than I use the other ones, but I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start off with this orange Stabilo because it's thin enough to give me the line work I want, at least for now. And what I'm doing is adding, like in the shadowy areas, a bit more structure. I'm probably gonna go back over this in black, but I always tend to prefer to start with a color, especially with yellow flowers. And I have these, might as well try and use them. I tend to go in with color first. And you can go at your leisure with this. You really can create what you want here. This orange is just a simple way to bring out what I'm going to really focus on with the black. You can also use blue or green. I do have some greens. I actually might use them right now. This is a Caran d'Ache, and it's just fun to like add a little bit of extra color pop to things. And so it just lightened that up a little bit. And then I could go in with something like this more of a teal green, mint green, and add some stuff there too, which I actually think does a lot for this piece. And then I'm gonna go back to using this here. So I am going to sharpen it. This is not sharp enough for me. I like a very sharp tip when I'm working with these Daffodils, which is why this is so short. I sharpen it pretty much all the time. So you can see that's much sharper. I'm gonna go in here and darken up the inside of that center nose. And then just create some more doodles around the edges to imply more shadow. You can go over what you previously drew, or you could just use black and black only. You could do this with pencil. You could do this with regular colored pencil. You could do this in a lot of different ways. This is just my preference. The tools I already have are happily used. Definitely here and here. You can already kind of see that this is it just brings out the pop to the flower that sometimes gets lost in the looseness of my watercolor sketching. Okay, I'm definitely gonna come back in here. I'm gonna bring that out a little bit. And then I definitely want to bring out the darkness in the top of this boot and in the bottom of this boot. So I'm kind of outlining and then doing a little scritch, and then just finding the corners, and you can see it's already getting dull, hence me sharpening it all the time. I'm gonna come down this way. I'm gonna actually underline some of these polka dots, or not underline them, but like give them a little curl underneath. I like the idea that they have a little bit of extension off the boot that creates a shadow. I don't know that they do, but I just like it. And then I'm gonna play with these leaves a little bit. I'm going to strengthen up the darkness of these stems near the top and near where they're peeking into the boot. Also going to outline this boot section here so you can still see it. And then up here and here. And there you have it. Our cute little bonus bouquet of flowers for your mom, or you have the mom figure in your life who you love, or just for you. Who doesn't love having a little floral bouquet to celebrate you? And that's it. So thank you so much for coming to my YouTube tutorial. If you're interested in these paints, feel free to, the brushes, the paper, feel free to reach out and message me. I am on TikTok, Instagram, obviously YouTube, Facebook, most of the socials you can find me on, Threads, and you will find all of my work, whether it's tutorial style, live style, or simply just posts. I'm happy to have you here, and I hope you continue to come. If you haven't yet liked, followed, or subscribed, please do. I'm really getting so much better about keeping posts up to date here. Thanks so much, and happy Mother's Day to those mothers who celebrate.